Welcome to my Conscious Podcast. I'm Jessica Klingspor, and this is a podcast where we dive into our inner worlds and the incredible skills hidden inside us. It is a space for honest and meaningful conversations where our guests share their stories and insights from their life experiences and journeys of self-discovery. Today's guest is someone who walks the line between two worlds, where ancient spiritual wisdom meets the pulse of modern business. Nils von Heijne is a former tech entrepreneur credited with building and scaling over 20 startups, making him one of Sweden's most dynamic figures in the startup scene. But his journey took an unexpected turn, from boardrooms to spirit realms. Now, known as a corporate shaman, Nils helps organizations navigate complexity, not just through strategy, but through soul. He brings a unique lens to the leadership rooted in shamanic practices, authenticity, and deep understanding of both human consciousness and corporate ecosystems. In this episode, we will explore how mystical experiences, ancient traditions, and intuitive wisdom can hold powerful insights for today's business challenges. Get ready for a conversation that's both grounded and otherworldly. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to my Conscious Podcast. I'm thrilled to have Nils von Heijne with me here today. And you call yourself a corporate shaman. And before this, you were one of Sweden's most successful tech entrepreneurs with plus 20 startups on your curriculum. And now you're blending ancient spiritual traditions with the demands of today's business environment. We will tap into your story, from mystical encounters with outwardly beings, and how to guide companies through complexity. And your path is a compelling fusion between the mystical and the practical. And today we will talk about your shamanic wisdom, how you can offer deep guidance for modern organizations and helping them to stay grounded and authentic while adapting to this ever-evolving world. How are you feeling stepping into this conversation today?
I feel like that's a lot to live up to.
No pressure.
No pressure. But I feel good. It's really good seeing you again. And as always, I enjoy having this type of conversation, and I'm always curious what will emerge through us having this conversation today.
Yeah. I mean, we know each other since, I think it was 2016 when you came down to Barcelona and was a speaker on one of my Women in Power events, first time. And then we have followed each other's paths and co-created quite intensely there during the pandemic when Inner Works was an embryo. And now it's also evolved. You will explain a little bit more about that later. But yeah, I mean, if we tap into your story, I mean, we go before even the shamanic things. If we start at the beginning, before the startups, what was the moment early in your life when you first sensed there was something more, something beyond the ordinary?
The only honest way for me to answer that is that I realized in hindsight. At the time, I didn't realize, but now looking back, knowing what I know now, I can see some patterns that I very early on was drawn to the magical and the mystical, but there was nothing in my lived experience, nothing in my family, nothing in the culture I grew up in or the area I grew up in where that was present. It only lived in the fairy tales and the stories back then. But the two things that still stand out is there's a book called Watership Down, which is about rabbits. And
about rabbits?
It's about rabbits, and one of the main characters is a psychic rabbit. And that story, it somehow spoke extremely deeply to me. I forced my mother to read it. It's a book, it's a novel, but I forced her to read it 3 times back to back. Like as soon as it was over, she had to start over. She told me that story a few times, and I can feel. I don't know what age I was, but I was probably 6 or 7 or 8 or something like that. I can vividly still feel how that story felt to me.
Yeah.
And then I also had these, when I was going to bed, I imagined things, and I had two recurring imaginations that I envisioned or played around with in my mind as I was falling asleep. One was that I was a giant squirrel came to my window, and I rode that squirrel into the night and like into the forest, and then around to all my friends and kind of looked at them sleeping, and then somehow back to my place and fell
And on a
asleep.
repeated basis, this
Yeah,
rabbit
yeah,
came.
yeah, yeah, very often. And then the other was that I kind of pulled the bed cover over my head, and I pretended to be a small animal living in the earth underneath the soil. That was like
Oh, really?
underneath somehow, and that I also repeatedly up to a fairly adult age almost. That somehow usually or quite often came back to me. And in hindsight, I can obviously see patterns in that, the connection to nature and the connection to kind of the magic of nature, I guess.
Is that a fragment of a memory from something previous?
I haven't
You think
explored it actually.
the
It
blueprint of
could
it? I
be. I
mean,
think now that you say it, the thing of kind of hiding or living underneath the ground, that um, felt like a lived experience rather than something I was imagining. Um, yeah,
yeah, because you can tell
I haven't
the
gone.
difference. No, you can tell the difference if it is a
Yeah,
memory or if it's a fantasy.
yeah,
The
and that
sensation is
that feels
different.
that feels much more like a memory.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Interesting that you asked that question because I actually haven't gone that deep into those specific parts
But
of
were
my
you a
mind.
little bit a little odd kid growing up in your very traditional family?
I wasn't odd back then. I was very creative,
You became odd
and
later.
I became odd later, increasingly
It's
odd as the
increasing.
years progressed, and who knows where I'll end up. I'm still 42, so. But the oddness, I did do things like starting things. I started a floorball team, and no one, if you don't live in Sweden, you don't know what floorball is, but it's like indoor hockey, but you can't tackle one another. It's a very feminine hockey version. I started my first floorball team when I was 11 because we played it in school. So I pulled together a team and we joined a club, where we became the first team of that club. And then I was the coach, but I couldn't because I was 11. So I brought in my dad as a stand-in. I was the actual coach, and he was just sitting there.
Okay.
So I was doing things like that fairly early on, like initiating things, and I was fairly creative. But the weirdness and the oddness started appearing much later, much later.
But it feels like you were born with this entrepreneurial brains mindset of being a creator, and that's how you started, right, in the tech sector with all your
Yeah,
startups. Tell me a little bit briefly, how was that career going? Because you jumped off the business school, the international business school in Stockholm, right? You didn't finish it because you thought, why should
I
I?
know I did. I actually did finish it. I never showed my grades to anyone though. I had
Okay.
fairly good grades, but I never need, since I started working as an entrepreneur, I never had a reason to really, show my grades to anyone. But the pattern has been that I break out of things into something new, and then I break out of that. And looking back at, where I grew up, very safe, super academic. There was nothing spiritual on the surface. There was nothing entrepreneurial on the surface. There was nothing creative, really, on the surface. And I kind of broke out of that. It was more science, like science and that kind of thing. And I time after time, I've kind of broken away from a path. That is, I broke away from natural sciences into business. That was a rebellious thing in my family. And then in business, I broke away from, in investment banking, that kind of stuff, into communication and marketing. And then in marketing, I broke away from traditional marketing into digital, word of mouth, social media marketing, and then into tech entrepreneurship, and then from tech entrepreneurship into the spiritual path, and then from, maybe not from, but as a deepening of the spiritual path into a shamanic path. So there's been a lot of breaking out of along my path, and but to answer your question, I did, and I still am. I guess I still work entrepreneurially, but that has also shifted. Initially, it was the world opened up for me through entrepreneurship. I wasn't born into it. I found it and realized, oh, this is for me. And then I went overboard and started too many things. Hence the 20 plus startups. Yeah. And then about 10 years ago, I started to fine tune it, or started to find the core of it. It's not just the creative thing for the sake of creativity, or starting things for the sake of starting them, but to really find like a thread, a deeper current in why I was doing that, and what parts of it actually felt truly important for me, and how can I use that specific energy towards something that I wish to bring to the to this life and to this work.
Can you tell us a little bit about that shift? What happened when you took that leap from the traditional tech startup world into something more unknown, more diffused, so to speak, towards this spiritual path?
Yeah, it also happened in steps. Initially it was, which is common in the tech world these days, it was Burning Man 2014. It was me having that experience, and also starting to explore psychedelics for the first time. And it just opened up my mind and my heart and my worldview in many ways. And initially it was very much of an opening, and then I started through that exploration. That's how it started, and then I just continued exploring myself in as many ways as I could, whether that was meditation or breath work, or men's work, or anything basically that I could find called to me. And at a certain point, things started to really open up within me, and I started to actually see myself as a part of an ecosystem, as a part of the world, not just as myself inside of a world, but actually as part of the world. And with that, everything I was doing shifted. Just the realization, which of course is very logical, but it took me some time, and I think it takes some time for people to actually embrace it, that I'm just part of life and part of evolution, and I get to choose what role I'll play in this lifetime. And with that, my entrepreneurship and my creativity shifted, and then in came shamanism, and then that layer was added to it, and now it's this mix of the business world, the entrepreneurial world, the tech world, and the shamanic spiritual world.
Yeah. So could you elaborate a little bit about this shamanic work that you're doing? Because I know you, but the listeners, at least here in Barcelona, there is a lot that don't know you. Yeah. So if you can explain a little bit more clear about how did you enter this work? What are you actually doing? And how can you use this in the modern world for modern companies that are open to this kind of indigenous parallels a little bit? How to ground their companies, etc. If you want to talk about that.
Yeah, I'd love to. So I was initiated into shamanhood or shamanship in 2019. So I'm 6 years into that path, which is not a long time. I'm still young in a sense in spiritual realms. I have a lot left to learn.
Well, in this earthly life, yes.
Yes. For a few years, those worlds were parallel to me, one foot in each world, because they had to be. I needed to distance myself quite a bit from what I'd been doing previously, and now they're integrating. And the way it looks is, to make it as an object, something concrete. I call it corporate shamanism. And I'm not the only one doing that. We're actually now more. I'm finding more and more people around the world who are bridging those two worlds, the shamanic world and the business world. And there's actually a corporate shamanic collective being created at the
Oh,
moment.
really?
So that's exciting, with people from a few different countries that are walking a similar path. And the way we're obviously finding the path as we go, because the corporate world and the shamanic world haven't historically been that well connected.
No.
But the simple way to explain it is that we bring and honor shamanic practices and shamanic principles in a corporate or a business setting, and you can apply it on different levels or in different layers. So one is quite obviously to work with individuals, to support founders and leaders with their deep inner work through shamanic practices, where the notion is quite simply that the person is connected to the company. It doesn't matter where you are in the organization, your field is connected to that collective field, which we call a company. And whatever is happening within you, whatever is being expressed through you, you'll see that in the organization as well. So if you want your organization to be something that has a specific frequency or vibration that brings something into the world, and you don't want all of your shadow sites to come along for the ride,
No.
which we see in a lot of big companies with strong founders, it makes sense both for you and for the organization to actually do deep inner work through shamanic practices or other practices. So I see it in other people like me as well. We work with human beings and just facilitate their life journey and the connection between them and the company that they're running or are a part of. That's the simplest way, the most natural way, I think. Maybe the most obvious, at least. But then you can also apply shamanic practices and principles to an organization at large. So you can apply it to structure. How do you structure an organization when you actually look at living systems and ecosystems and how regenerative principles work in the rest of nature, and apply that structurally to
Yeah.
companies? You can do it in strategy. How do you actually strategize for a company, both for what you actually wish to achieve, what is the underlying purpose or the question that you're trying to answer, but also how do you actually navigate, because we are increasingly experiencing the world as a complex, living, emergent thing rather than a mechanistic, controlled, just complicated thing. So we can't anymore make the annual plans, and we can't think that we know what's going to happen, and best practices and benchmarks don't really apply when everything is shifting constantly all the time. So how do you
All the
actually
time.
how do you navigate? So strategy and also ways of working. How do you set a strategy, and how do you actually work, which a lot of it has to do with relationality. How can I be
Yeah.
in relationship with myself, with the other person? How can we be in relationship to the surrounding world, to our purpose, etc., and work with relationality rather than fixed plans or just transactions or control. So you can apply it anywhere. You can talk about it, and you can apply it as shamanic practices. You can sit in ceremony. You can bring in drums. You can go into deeper realms. But if you're not comfortable with that, you can also put on your scientific hat instead and label it or frame it as complexity or living systems theory, working through emergent or regenerative principles. So it's more or less the same thing, but the application is a little bit different depending on what you're open for and what feels natural. So
Yeah.
I work
It's to
in
find
both
the
realms.
language, no? It's to
Yeah,
find the language to be able to translate it into the boardrooms.
yeah,
Because, I
that's
mean,
exactly it.
how do you approach companies today, or do they find you? How does it work?
They mainly find me or us. Increasingly, individuals are open to it. Increasingly, um, the world view, the way we're describing the world, makes sense to more and more people. And
Yeah.
the tricky thing for most people is we don't really have a lot of clear training in how to navigate it. So that's why we tend to cling to old ways of doing things, which simply don't seem to work anymore. And as we understand that this is not working anymore, then certain people and organizations show up at our doorstep, and
Yeah.
we
They are the brave ones. I
support them.
mean, because they're also breaking away from the norm, the old paradigms.
Yes, very much so. It's really, that's my experience. We're at the point where you first have the, whatever you want to call those very very early. It's not even the early movers.
Adopters.
It's not even early adopters. It's like before that, the ones who just find themselves in something that is a new way, a novel way of doing things or looking at things, and it's usually deeply unsettling and uncomfortable to be there.
Yeah.
And then after a while, the early adopters come, those who, for different reasons, are daring enough or open enough to actually start exploring it, and then incrementally, it
Mm.
shifts. So in a couple of years, I feel pretty sure that this type of topic will not be as weird or as extreme anymore. And
Not so
for me,
abstract anymore now.
no,
It's
like
going
in
fast
20,
now.
it's going faster and faster. And like 5, 6 years ago, when this began for me, it was really out there. And now it's still really out there, but it's much less so. Like people
No, I
don't.
remember when you started and you got some articles about it, and people were like, "What is he doing?" And you have been so consistent, but because this is you. So
This is me.
yeah, and staying on your path. I mean, and honoring what's coming to you. Did you develop like a method, or are you channeling everything, or how does it work?
Um, I've had the experience of making a few earlier life choices based on intuition, where it became apparent for me that I don't have a choice. Like I can see that it doesn't look rational or logical. My mind can see that. My mind can agree with that, but my entire being doesn't have a choice. Like I cannot not walk this way, this path. And I initially I did it in areas that don't look weird or challenging today. For instance, going into entrepreneurship instead of taking the steady job offer that I had, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. And every time I felt that I'm true to my core when I do it, and it opens something up, and I feel more whole. So when this came up, I my brain was like, "Fuck, like I don't want to be
No.
walk around and call myself a shaman and do this. Like my mind is like, why can't I just not do that
Be a
and take
normal guy and just do my
yeah
thing.
yeah
Yeah.
just take the beaten path and just do some ordinary work and make money and feel quote unquote safe. But my soul is very clear with me, and I don't have a choice. And it's also obvious to me today that I can't, like, no matter what happens, I cannot walk another path. It's just
No.
impossible because I'll be hurting myself way too much. Like, it's not worth it to hurt myself. It's more worth it to stay true to myself and suffer or accept the
Yeah,
consequences
that's it's
than
another
to
kind of
forsake.
suffering than if you're
Yeah,
not true to yourself. Because if you're not authentic in this, it's a big friction. Of course, it's about
yeah,
frequencies. Yeah.
yeah. It's all about frequencies, and I know my frequency and I have to follow it, even though it does bring challenge and suffering as well.
Yeah. Now, what are your most important challenges that you have experienced at work?
The two that come up is standing up in a sense for myself or for what my path is, to actually be open with it. It's not standing up in the sense of against someone else. It's just for what I believe in, to actually express it and be vocal about it. That's partly, and the other one, which is still ongoing, and it's been my challenge for the past 2.5 years, is initially had a little bit of to do with achievement and my identity connected to that, because I carried around an achiever identity since I was 10. I still hold it to some extent, even though it's shifted quite a bit. But the second is around money, because I never really had to worry. I've always had money. I've never been super wealthy or super rich, but I've always had money. And this path has led me into, I still have money, but I've been letting go of money more or less constantly for 2.5 years, because I have to walk this path. And this path, I know that energetically money is coming through this path. It is increasingly doing that. But a
Slowly.
huge part of it is to go so deep into the acceptance pattern that it doesn't even matter if there's money or not. So I'm still moving through that. I'm moving through accepting it, relaxing into it, trusting existence. And my intention is to find a point where, even if I experience having, massive amounts of money, I will have no more fear of losing. Like, I don't want a fear pattern in myself to be connected to money. And
No, because it takes away the abundance. It becomes the lack instead.
exactly. Yeah, and it's. I have two patterns that I found in myself. One is the lack, kind of the fear of not having it, and what that might lead to. And the other is because I've been able to make a lot of money when I didn't care, when it wasn't that important. Then I had no issue charging. I was a
With no
super well
chase.
paid consultant. Yeah, I was a super well paid consultant, but it wasn't my soul's work, so to speak. And when it's my soul's work, it's so important that it's difficult for me to charge, because I want it to happen. I want to do the work. So personally, there's that. But then if I zoom out, there are two patterns that are important. One is that I can see it in myself and others that money is so fear-based for so many of us. We're so connected to it. We're so, tied to it. And the other is the increasing signs that capitalism is dying. That just this past few weeks, there's a lot of new, or maybe not new, but articles and stories and narratives and information coming out around how physical climate change is most likely just going to kill capitalism, because so much wealth, financial wealth, will be destroyed. As an example, like all of the houses that are in regions that will be increasingly affected, you won't be able to insure them anymore, and then people have loans on those houses, and then people won't buy those houses, and the people who have loans and are stuck with the houses can't sell them, can't pay the bank loans, and then eventually the banks go down, and eventually, like, the capitalistic system just crumbles because of climate change. And then financial wealth and money is most likely no longer the main metric, or the main value, or the main, all these things. And what does that future look like? And we don't know how far away it is, but it's like maybe 20 years away, 25, something like that, by the looks of it. So in our lifetime.
Yeah. Also, the next gen has a total different view on work and money and how we are supposed to run the world.
Yeah. So for me personally, I want to go through that pattern now. I don't want to wait 25 years. Like, why not do it now? So I can practice.
Consciously. Yeah, but that is amazing that you choose to do that, because we choose everything we do, even if we don't know someone.
Yeah,
sometimes.
even if it's I think for me it's been a subconscious choice quite a lot, and now it's slipping through to my conscious layer, and I'm like, oh, I see why I'm choosing to do it like this.
But how are you working with your subconscious? Because I mean, between 1 and 7, we are like sponges, and we just take in everything, and we have that programmation with us during life until something happens, usually, and we have a shift or an awakening, and we realize that it's 95% of our subconscious is programmed and conditioned.
Yeah.
I mean, who is the Nils before the world told you who you should be? Have you peeled off all those layers to get inside your blueprint?
Yeah, of course you can never peel off all the layers.
It's
But
a
I peeled off
constant
quite,
work.
yeah, and it's infinite. It's never ending. There are infinite numbers of layers. But I peeled off quite a few in this lifetime. And it's quite clear that who I was actually in that age, from like 0 to 7, I'm coming back to that increasingly. Like my identity, I wasn't aware of my identity until I was 10. That was my first identity that kind of locked me in somehow. Um,
What happened at 10?
we had our first tests in school, and I had the highest score in the class, which was a surprise to everyone, including myself. I had no notion of me being talented in school, but turned out I was really good at memorizing things. And then all of a sudden, like from one day to the next, there was a story about who I was becoming, primarily from
Okay.
teachers and other kids. And then I lived that story for many years. But to your point, I'm reconnecting with how my consciousness was expressing itself in those early years, which was very loving and very playful and very creative and very present. So I'm slowly moving back into that state, and overall, what my experience is, my lived experience is, and to in many ways also my practice is to. It's basically, I mean, it's mindfulness, but it's mindful. It's constant mindfulness. It's relaxing my mind. Whenever there's a thought, I try to relax the thought and just invite in more of my field. So my body and my soul and sensations and emotions, whatever is there, I'm increasingly just trying to be with it. And over a number of years, that has shifted my lived reality quite a bit, to the extent of, I've shared that many times, but whenever I go to bed, I spend quite a lot of time in this like liminal space between being awake and being asleep, where my body
The
goes
theta
numb.
brain.
Yeah, it's probably theta. My body goes numb, and I feel the energies physically. I can feel energies in the room moving physically through my body, and it's how I connect to deeper realms or other dimensions of universe. It's just relaxing basically and
Yeah.
allowing myself to be connected.
Is these the moments that when you can really feel guided and connected?
Yeah, yeah. There's always guidance and learning there, and it's not ever the same thing. Just last night, I had a very deep and very challenging experience because my son, who's 6, woke up in the middle of the night and he had wet his bed. So I, took all of the sheets and then I had to rinse him off because he was reeking. But he was in a state where he did not want that, so he went full on tantrum, semi asleep, semi awake mode, screaming, and eventually I got him clean enough and to be able to put him back to bed. And then he hit me. He hit me on the leg, like all of that built up anger and all of the emotions that were in it came through his fist into my leg. And then I got him to bed and he fell asleep. But that that energetic imprint in my leg stayed. And I spent the next 45 hours or so just feeling how the energy of it spread throughout my body. And I could feel the darkness. I could feel his pain. I could feel his anger. I could feel all of it moving through me for about an hour.
But did he pass it on to you, or is it still within him?
To some extent, it is still within him. And also, I consciously chose to welcome it into me, so I could process some of it for him, but at the same time also learn myself from that experience, to feel it, to feel what that does, and to just look at, okay, what were the other things happening yesterday and over the past couple of days that might have built up to it, and what was my role as a father in that. I could see energetically, oh, here I actually increased that within him because my tone of voice when I, replied, or how I held him or stopped him from doing things, these kinds of things that parents go through on a daily basis. I could feel what it energetically had led to, and since I felt it, it's easier for me to shift my approach because I'm learning because of that.
Yeah, how are you working with your
energetic.
kids? You have two kids, balancing
Yeah.
the mystical and the practical in their
It's
upbringing.
interesting. It's interesting. It really feels like balancing because, of course, they have it naturally within themselves, and they know what I do for a living, and they know their father is working as a shaman,
But what
and
are
they
their
are.
questions? What do they say to you and ask you about?
They don't ask me about that much. I feel as if they feel most of it and understand it, and when I start channeling things or moving things around, it feels natural to them. But at the same time, especially with our oldest who's now in school, um, I can tell how he's questioning things about, what is magic and what is real, and all that can't be real, which I did as well at that age. And then now I have a different experience where, oh, these things actually feel very real to me.
Yeah.
So it makes me curious about what does that come from within him. I haven't said anything to that extent. My wife hasn't. Somewhere he's picked up that certain things are not real and you can't believe them. And he's just 6, so I'm just curious about where he's picking up things. But overall, my chosen perspective is that I'm not here to convince them of anything. I have my lived experience. Doesn't mean that it's real for anyone else.
No.
I'm not here to convince them or indoctrinate them with any type of thinking, but just try to constantly add perspective. Let's just soften whatever they get convinced by. Just soften it a little bit, that it doesn't become too much of a cage, if you will.
No. And how do you see where nature comes in all to this? Because you were living in Stockholm before, and then you moved with your family up to the very north in Sweden to Åre, and now you live there. How is life different from before, living close to nature?
Energetically much more grounded, and much more
Can you imagine?
relaxed. Yeah, I feel much better. Personally, I had to do it because with my experience of just being much more attuned to energetics these days than being in basically in any big city. But Stockholm in particular is, it becomes overwhelming after a while because my experience of the energy is so intense, and it's both tense and anxious. The way I read the energetic imprint of Stockholm, so I don't have the training yet to spend a lot of time in that type of energetic field.
To maintain your frequency, you mean?
Yeah, it becomes overwhelming after a while. I feel it too strongly to be able to hold it for a long period of time. A couple of days is doable, but not more than that.
I know what
But
you're talking about. I'm struggling with Barcelona.
yeah, And this seems to be happening for more and more people. Like the first time I talked about it, that the energies of Stockholm are challenging for me to be in. Most people didn't understand what I was talking about, and now I have the experience of more and more people coming to me like, "Oh, I see what you mean." Like I'm starting to feel something as well. I'm feeling called to nature or to like a smaller place. I'm starting to notice what happens when I stay in Stockholm or a big city for too long. What happens with my thought patterns? What happens in my body? My sense of connection. These things. Um, and to your initial question, like we are part of nature, and
Mm.
when we seclude ourselves or disconnect ourselves from nature, whether that is just staring at a screen all day or only walking on concrete for a full day, or never seeing a forest or lake or stopping to feel the wind or sunshine or whatever it is, it does something quite detrimental to us, is my experience. And it's not only for us to feel well being in nature, even though it's quite obvious and also proven quite a few times that just placing people in nature has a healing effect. But
Totally.
we also have so much to learn from all of the patterns, the wisdom it's hiding in plain sight in nature. Like we just have to look at it. Just look at the patterns of how things
How it's
grow.
regenerative.
Exactly.
Things
It's
are
simple.
regenerating in nature.
It's really, really simple when you look at it. Just mimic
Yeah.
that to your own life, to your own organizations.
But how do you picture that humanity can restore our natural relationship with the nature?
Oh, it's simple. These things are actually simple because we are part of nature, so we have it intuitively within ourselves.
Of
Uh,
course, but people are living in
Hence,
cities.
yeah,
They don't slow down.
no,
The pace is just increasing. I'm not talking about people like you and me. I'm talking about generalizing. How
yeah.
can we restore our
My
relationship with
yeah,
nature?
my perspective is it happens automatically, and there are two ways it happens. Either you start feeling attracted to the natural patterns, to nature, to presence, to connection, to whatever it is, um, or the pain becomes unbearable. You burn out. You you know
Yeah,
something breaks, and when it breaks, just as a plant that withers away, just withers down into the soil again. You come back into yourself. You come back into relationship with what's important. And that happens when you break down, whether it's you as an individual or an entire system. And we have two forces constantly at work, the attractor and the repellent. So it's like something is attracting us and something is repelling us. So there's pain that's pushing us away from what's not sustainable. And there's attraction or fascination or curiosity or love or whatever it is that's moving us towards something. And it's light and darkness. They're doing the same thing. So
yeah,
whether it's the super enlightened guru person that you feel that you just want to be in the presence of out in nature somewhere, or it's Trump or Putin that you feel like, oh hell no, it's like they're actually doing the same job. It's not a straight line. It's not an easeful experience,
no,
especially with the pain pattern, but it's going to bring us to the same place.
yeah, yeah, totally. You also wrote a book. Um, and how was that process? Would you like to tell us a little bit about your book
I'll be
and the
happy to.
purpose of it?
The purpose, initially, there wasn't really a purpose. This was part of my life when my mind was really trying to understand existence and the universe. And I collected ideas and patterns and perspectives. And at a certain point, I had so many of them that I had to start writing them down to keep track of them. As soon as I did, I just felt, oh, I'm meant to write a book. Um, and then it was 2 years of very synchronistic experiences. The book is called 42, and that number keeps following me around. But especially
It does?
42 is that's the number. That's my main guiding number. And during those 2 years, when the book was being written, it was everywhere. Like, I started counting after a while. It's like, I think I averaged at least 10, sometimes up to 20 42s per day. It was just everywhere I looked. It was
Signs.
42, 42, 42. So the book is called 42. And the experience was very much that the book kind of wrote itself. Like, I had a few of these patterns and I put them down, and then I started putting them together and I started writing. And I didn't know what was going to come towards the end of the book, but it just appeared, not just through me, but through my surroundings. It could be someone pointing me to an article or another book, or just someone saying something in conversation, where I so many times had the experience like, oh, that's exactly what's meant to be written on the next page of the book. So I felt as if I was given the content.
Unfolded within you, through you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And has this book become a useful tool in your work with companies, with leaders?
Yeah, quite a few of the patterns in there I keep using, like sense-making patterns, or tools that they're never the answer, right? But they're kind of like crutches or something that we can lean on to facilitate the process. But then we need to let go of the tool, because it's never the answer. It's just something that we can use along the way. So I repeatedly use some of those tools and perspectives, but now there's also quite a few others that are circling around. But the book, it's as with everything, it's doing what it's meant to be doing. It's finding people when it should, and it's also been a good, beautiful process for me to let go of. Well, always let go of the outcome. Like, I meant to do this thing. I don't know where it leads. It doesn't really matter where it leads. What matters is that I meant to do it, and then I do it, and then things happen as they should.
You follow the path like that, like it's just unfolding.
Yeah,
and within the works, you also created together with Amit Paul, your duo tandem, a new way of a new organism for company form.
Yeah, interesting.
Would you like to tell us about that?
I'd be happy to. The moment you said his name, he called me right on my phone. So
really? Say hi to him.
I will. Innerworks.
That's also a sign.
Yeah, it's very much a sign, right? We're labeling Innerworks as a transformation lab, just because we still need to create objects to connect with the current paradigm. People get very uncomfortable when there are no objects, because we're so used to looking at solutions. So in the object world, we talk about it as a transformation lab. We work with the question of how can we change the business world so that the business world can be a part of creating a world that we want for our children. And we create new structures and ways of doing strategy and ways of working and new tools and AI startups and all sorts of things to that realm. The first thing that we did was this organizational, a new way to legally incorporate. But it's called an RCO.
And how in what ways is it different from the normal traditional structure? Well,
first and foremost, it's mimicking nature. It came from a shamanic ceremony in 2020 as a pattern. It has a deep spiritual pattern to it. It's the seed of life pattern that it's actually built around, and a toroidal energy field, if you're interested in physics. Yes. And then if you look at biology, it's you put a purpose at the center. You put a protective layer of human beings around the purpose, and then you can connect businesses to it, companies, normal limited companies that work towards the purpose, but through business innovation, product, services,
And
whatever
these
it is.
companies can be different companies, even competitors, but working for the same purpose.
Yeah, they can do different things or similar things,
That's
but it's
beautiful.
towards the same purpose. So it's an ecosystem. It's a mycelium, and it has a life cycle. So it follows the natural, things.
So there is death as well,
There's
and
that as well.
rebirth.
Yes, and it becomes regenerative because certain things will have different life cycles and different amounts of energy, as in people, engagement, money, etc. And then at a certain point in the life cycle, each entity, we look at it as living organisms, start sending some energy back to the soil, which is basically the purpose, the protected layer. And if one company grows big, it will send more energy back to the center, and the center will regenerate into new initiatives. Could be new companies, could be research and science, could be conferences, gatherings, media, whatever it is, towards the same purpose, and then it just keeps going. So
Like an infinite.
Yeah,
It's not a
so
finite.
it's not a finite, and it can be once it dies, if the whole structure wants to die because there's no engagement anymore, it doesn't make sense anymore, then it becomes in the business world, it becomes a time-limited foundation whose only job is to redistribute all of the remaining energy, assets, money, whatever, into the surrounding ecosystem at that time. So just as a plant is dying, it becomes soil, and the nutrients go out into the soil, and from that new plants grow up. It does the same thing. So it's very, very simple because it's just mimicking the rest of nature, but it's in the business world, it's an innovation.
Yeah, I mean, have you applied this mausoleum to several businesses?
We are, yeah. So we're applying it to everything. All the companies we start, they use this RCO structure at the moment. So we're creating one RCO. It currently has two separate companies in it. One is Airworks, the transformation lab. Another is an AI startup. And now we're also we're in conversation with quite a few people and initiatives who want to apply it. And there's one fairly large that we don't know if it's going to happen yet, so I'm not going to speak to it publicly. But there's some very large organizations who are collaborating on a purpose-driven initiative.
Wow.
And hopefully,
exciting.
By the looks of it, they're applying the RCO structure too.
Well, to traditional business owners, it might sound a little bit abstract, all this. How do you present this business model when you come and speak about it? Or they're already open to it, to the people that you're...
I mean, it does require some time because you get a lot of detailed questions about what's the risk of a hostile takeover, what happens if there's an exit event, what type of investor, what does it mean for investors, what does it mean for the entrepreneurs, what does it mean for employees, stuff like that. Of course, we created a GPT for it, so you can ask all of these questions to AI, so we don't have to answer all the time, which is on rco.life is the website. But overall, like the most simplistic way of talking about it is that it's purpose over profit. It's not instead of profit. Profit is still there, still allowed. But there's something more important than profit.
Than the profit,
itself.
Yeah. But the profit fuels the purpose.
Yeah, it does. And the other is that if the purpose is the most important, then it's also more important than the actual solution. So if you have one quote-unquote solution, we treat it more as a hypothesis. Like, that's fantastic, that might work. If it works, great. But if, for a question or a problem, there are usually multiple potential solutions, and this allows for all of them to actually be applied. And so it also actually taps into more of the scientific method than the startup method, which is, snake oil. It's like, find an idea and convince everyone that you're right, even though you know that you don't know, and then hustle to make it work, and then 92 to 95% fail rate.
Yeah, the old paradigm again.
Yeah.
Not regenerative at all, and not the pro the founder's health. It's not very...
No, it's just, we've been thinking of business and companies and creating things as machinery. because of the industrialism, right? And we're starting to understand that we're not machines. We're living beings and living systems. And
And
when
we
we
have to
just
tend to
start
our
applying,
garden.
exactly, when we start applying that, it's actually quite simple.
Yeah. But you also legalize this RCO, right? It's
Yeah,
like a legal entity that you can
it's a
start.
legal entity. You can do. We've done it in Sweden. The beauty of it is that you don't have to spend years lobbying for it because it's using parts that are available in almost all legal jurisdictions. Like you need some form of private company, you need some form of nonprofit association, and at the end of it, some form of foundation. And you basically have that almost everywhere. You just connect them in a specific. It's like Lego bricks. You just put them together in a specific way with a specific horizon or purpose. And so when we did it in Sweden, we basically just did it and said, you know,
This
send
is
in
it.
all of the applications, and it's just like, this is how we're going to do it, and it was approved. So it's not. It is a legal entity. It's novel in a way, but it's actually just using things in a new way. So it's
In a new way.
yeah, most likely it's applicable to almost all legal
Could it also be
jurisdictions.
used in a cluster model?
Say something more. What do you mean by cluster model?
A cluster model, like, there are clusters within an ecosystem, like there is tech, there is fintech within edtech, food tech. And then these clusters, you could actually connect the whole
Yes.
ecosystem. Yeah.
Yes. So it's like visually, it looks like toruses, toroidal energy fields. It's like the center point is the purpose, and then you have a bunch of entities in a circle around it, and it's regenerative. So the energy, information, engagement, money, etc., moves through the system. And at the center point, in the best of worlds, lies a question. So you could envision a future where society and businesses are built around a number of important questions. And each question has its own RCO. And there could be sub RCOs if there's like variations of the questions down the line. You can connect them. You could probably have an RCO of RCOs as well. But it's still early days. This thing is just emerging. But that's the visions that we've been seeing. Is something to that effect.
Interesting. And where can we read about this? Is there any place we can go online and read more about
Yeah,
it?
rco.life. It has podcasts and articles and the GPT and all sorts of decks, all sorts of things that you can look at
I
if
will
you're
put it
interested.
in the info under.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would like to add to this conversation that you would like to share with the listeners?
I mean, I could keep going on these topics forever, right? I think what I want to share, I usually want to share a question because I don't think any one of us actually hold answers for anyone else. We hold it, we have them already inside of us, and it's when we actually allow ourselves to listen to ourselves that we find our path. So, what is yours to bring into this world in your lifetime, in this life that you have? If you really go deep into yourself, what is yours to bring into the world? That's what I want to share.
That's very beautiful. That's really beautiful. And what about open contact? Are we are we going towards open contact? Are you in contact with any star family or aliens or entities?
Yes, I am. I'm in contact both to multiple layers and multiple entities. Most of them are in it sounds weird to say, like the standard or normal shamanic realms, where you find
Okay.
um, you'll find
But
spirit
are these
animals,
light
spirit
beings in
guides.
other galaxies, or where is this shamanic
Yeah, the
underworld?
shamanic ones are usually in the earth. They're
Yeah.
usually very here and now, and in the fields close to this planet. That's my experience of it. And then I have a few, especially one. It's like a tribe or a people that is definitely more astral, feels very alien, and they communicate with me, but primarily through me from time to time. So there's quite a bit of channeling happening through me, and almost none of it is in human language. And there are a few different ones. And sometimes the most interesting experience is that people have been communicating with another people through me, where I was just I was the meeting room, if you will. I was channeling both of them as they were talking to one another, and I was just there to be a translator, or more like a Zoom room. It's a spiritual Zoom room. They happen to meet through me. But yes, there's a lot of that. Now Amit is calling me again.
Well, Amit, you have to wait 2 minutes so we can finish here, and then you can call him. But it was a beautiful last question that you gave to the listeners, and it's been really exciting to hear about everything you are doing, and that you are following your path so consistently. So I'm very grateful to have had you on the Conscious Podcast, and we will see what we can do in the future to merge co-creation projects or whatever. But thank you to the listeners for listening, and be well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Always a pleasure.